Hey everybody, Tom Cherry Holmes here from IRATA.ONLINE for another release announcement, this time for PLATOTERM Lite for Atari 8-bit computers. PLATOTERM Lite is the special version of PLATOTERM for cartridges. Specifically on the Atari 8-bit, this allows for PLATOTERM to fit inside of a standard 16K cartridge or as a 16-bit self-contained binary load file, all by itself without any additional files needed. This was done in order to maximize compatibility across a wide variety of Atari system configurations. Now, it's not perfect yet. I still have some things I want to do. I want to try to make it work in 16K systems, for example. It will eventually. But you can see that it's already extremely compatible and contains all of the features that you need inside of the Plato terminal. In fact, the only thing that's not there is the ability to save preferences, which was removed so that the terminal could fit entirely within 16K of space. As always, you can take and download this copy of PLATOTERM directly from the IRATA.ONLINE website, IRATA.ONLINE. And you can see the announcement right here on the top. You can see that a small description here, as well as the release page on GitHub, which gives you all the information about this particular version of PLATOTERM, as well as a direct link to a zip file containing all of the different builds of this version. If we look on the release page on GitHub, we can see some information about this release, particularly that the entire code base has been stripped down and rebuilt from scratch, all so that I could guarantee that every single touch driver could comfortably fit inside of this version of PLATOTERM. Some of the other things I did was bring over many of the bug fixes that I had done on other versions of PLATOTERM, fold them in, so that the terminal works even better than before. Also, and of special note, the input buffer for receiving data has been drastically increased from 256 bytes to over 2048 bytes, or 2 kilobytes of space. This should basically allow us to test higher bit rates. And in the initial testing, it's showing that this is working quite well. Still some glitches and some things that we need to work out, but you can already see a very marked improvement, as you'll see here. In order to facilitate this, I've lifted the limitation that was originally there, 1200 bits per second, and you can now choose between 1200, 2400, 4800, or 9600 bits per second, respectively. You can, of course, see the other bits and pieces of the release notes, and of special note, in addition to the keys that I've put up here on top, they've all been fully debugged and should work now perfectly as expected. But also, you'll see that there's a new table here for what are called micro symbols. And these are keys that you press in combination with the micro key, which is Control-M, so that you can type such symbols as Greek letters and other mathematical symbols. We can see all of the different builds of PLATOTERM Lite for all of the supported touch devices right here, but you can see that they're both in ROM format, which is a raw 16 kilobyte format, as well as in XEX format, which can be loaded with any particular Atari DOS. You'll also see here that we have source code in zip and tar.gz formats, as well as a zip file containing all of the different ROM and XEX builds in one convenient zip file. So without any further ado, let's have a look at it and see what we can see here. Now, as we can see right here, we have what's the 1.3 tablet edition here, and I have an input device set up here for a touch tablet that can move the mouse pointer around effectively. Now, of note here, it's worth noting that the cartridge version of the software acts like a disk DOS cartridge. Other examples of DOS cartridges include the basic cartridge, assembler editor, etc. These cartridges attempt to load a disk operating system first before jumping into the cartridge itself. This is done so that you have the opportunity to load whichever R handler you wish to load at boot time. For certain devices like the Atari 850, of course, you can, of course, let these devices load their handler automatically if no disk drive is present. And actually, that is exactly how this guy is loaded right now. If we take and do a cold reset, we can see this happen. As you can see right there, coming back in, and everything's working just as expected. And if we go ahead and send a modem command, you can see that the modem command works just fine. Now, I'm going to go ahead and actually change my baud rate. I'm going to hold down the select key, and I'm going to press 9, and we're going to go into 9600 bits per second. And as we can see right here, we're still running just fine. We're going to go ahead and connect to IRATA.ONLINE at 9600 bits per second. And we're going to see that everything works just as expected. Now, because we're running at a faster speed, what's actually happening here is it's trying to buffer as much as it possibly can before it displays anything. This does mean that there is sometimes noticeable pauses whenever data is being received. I will try to improve the performance of this, but I wanted to do this as naively as possible at first, so that I could get something usable out to as many of you as I possibly can, and we can take and refine it later. You can see that there's a slight pause there, but you can see from here we're viewing everything just fine. It's doing quite a good job, and you can see it's actually pretty fast when you take the pauses into account. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Atari 8-bit notes file. We can see a slight pause here as it buffers this in, and we can see note number 20 is the release announcement for the 1.3 cart that we're testing right here. Let's take a look at it. As you can see, reading just fine, no problems. We can shift stop, get out of this, come back into data, come back into the menu, and after a slight pause for loading, notes menu comes right back up. And now you can see that there was a slight glitch there. This is still happening. I'm trying to work through this as best as I can. If it does, just try to redraw the screen, do something else, and work your way through it. Hopefully these glitches won't be too bad. If they are, please let me know, and let me know your system configuration as best as you can. And we will try to work this out as best as we can. Let's go ahead and try some games. Checkers, for example. We can see again slight pause as it takes and loads the data, loading the character set data. And if you're hearing the SIO noise in the background, you can see that the data comes through pretty quickly. It's then followed by pauses where the computer is actively processing the data through the terminal logic. Now, you may have noticed that there's a slight little hiccup here, slight glitch here. These correspond to overlaps when the X on, X off tries to flap on and off. It's not perfect yet, and I'm trying to work through it as best I can. But you can already see it's doing a darn good job, and it's a big improvement over the speed improvement of what we had before, all while also maintaining compatibility with the different touch devices. As you can see here, I'm using the touch pointer here to take and move the checkers piece. Doing just fine. Let's take a look at some of the others. Let's go ahead and go back into the menu. And again, you can definitely notice the slight pauses, but I think you can get used to it for sure. Let's go ahead and go to... Actually, I don't think that's I think that might actually be a slight bug in my menu that I need to fix. That might not be an X on, X off glitch. But let's look at, for example, I don't know. Let's see. Mahjong would be good. You can see the Mahjong place here. Let's do the PC character set with a little less detail so we can see fine. You can see it loaded it in, and it's now buffering it through the terminal logic. Once that's done, we'll have the opportunity to set up the board using mouse, play the turtle, regular game, and you can see right here, displaying fine. You can see where the X on X off takes and flaps a little bit as it tries to regain composure and control. But you can see right there, doing beautifully so far. I hope that it works as well on your machines as it is on mine. If not, we'll keep working at it. So, go ahead, continue. And I guess that's a good little test right now showing just some of the performance of this new version of PLATOTERM. Let's go ahead and log off real quick. We'll go ahead and hit back. Now, I've made some changes to the host of the system along with William Schaub, and we've actually made it now, actually he's done such a great job here making it so that, for example, when we press back to exit, that it will actively close the connection from the host side and clean everything up on the host side of things, making the disconnect experience much cleaner. So if we go ahead and hit exit from this point, since we don't have a DOS or anything loaded, it's going to jump out through DOSVec and go straight into self-test. But now things can get interesting, because now we can, for example, let's take, and just as a test, let's start loading up different operating systems in different combinations. For example, we'll start just by putting a disk in that has all my R handlers, and we'll turn on Sparta-DOS X. Oop. Try that again. Press the right key that time. We can see Sparta-DOS X coming up here in just a moment. Now we can see a list of different handlers here that we can take and load in. We'll actually load in the 850 handler, since that is the device I'm using here. And actually, if we take and jump to cartridge at this particular moment, we'll see that PLATOTERM comes up just fine. And if we exit, we come right back out to the DOS again. You'll also see that we have an XEX version of the software out here. And if I actually take and drop the cartridge, let's detach the cartridge, you'll see that if we load in Sparta-DOS X, load in the handler, I'm going to show you something. Regardless of which version that you're loading, if you try to load the cartridge or the binary load file format and you don't have a handler loaded, it will immediately drop you back out to DOS again, so that you have the opportunity to load a handler. As you can see, if I load a handler now, and subsequently load Plato again, you'll see that Plato loads up just fine, and we can do what we need to do. Of course, exiting out, coming right back to Sparta-DOS X. What about other operating systems? I've tried very hard to make this work on as many different operating systems and environments as I possibly can, and I'll try to demonstrate this as best I can. Let's start with something simple. For example, we could take and load up DOS 2.0. Plain old DOS 2.0. Go ahead and go into my disk folder here, 2.0s, hit OK, launch this out. Actually, do I have? I think I might actually still have, yeah, there it is. Let me get Sparta-DOS X out of here. Try that again. And here we have Sparta-DOS, we have DOS 2.0 loaded with the handler. And if we, for example, do I have? Oh, let me actually attach the cartridge. What do you say? This is what I get for improvising. So I'll take and attach the tablet cartridge like I did before. and we'll load. And you can hear DOS 2.0 loading as before, just fine. Loading the handler, getting it all in place, and once it's there, we come right back in, loading up just fine. We can, of course, exit out, and if we do, we take and bounce right back to DOS. And since I have memsave loaded here, it will take and write the handler, it'll write everything in the program area out so that it can load the disk utility package. Do our DOS commands, do what we need to do, and if we come back to the cartridge, it loads the program area back into place and jumps right back into the cartridge area. Everything's still working as expected. What about some others? Let's get interesting here. All right. What about MyDOS? Yeah, no problem. MyDOS runs just fine. Let's see. We load up MyDOS 4.53. Fairly standard version of MyDOS at this point. We can see this particular version of MyDOS also has the 850 handler loaded in. And as we can see right here, loading just fine. I can exit out. It goes back to the disk utility package. And MyDOS loads just fine. I can bounce right back to the cartridge. And everything works as expected. Let's really start doing some interesting stuff. Okay. What about SpartaDOS 3.2? SpartaDOS 3.2 jumps to the cartridge beforehand, and it doesn't load a handler automatically. What'll happen there? Well, in that case, it will try to load the cartridge, but it will also bounce out because the handler's not loaded. This is fine. It'll give you the opportunity to load the RS-232 handler if you don't already have one in your auto-exec script or your startup script. And you can see here, SpartaDOS 3.2 loads up. It'll bounce to a prompt, and boom, go to the cartridge. It doesn't load, so it bounces you to the prompt, which gives you, which gives you the opportunity to load the handler. You can then bounce to the cartridge, and everything is just fine. Of course, exit out. All right. Well, gosh, so far so good, huh? Well, let's get exotic. Surely DOS 3 wouldn't work. No, DOS 3 would never work. Fine. Well, let's see. DOS 3 loading up. And oh my gosh, it's workinating. Exit out. Come to the KCP. And to cartridge. And oh my gosh, still works. Okay. Alright, smartass. What about DOS 4? I don't know. Let's see. DOS 4. DOS 4, of course, was the version of DOS that was meant for the 1450 XLD that was never officially released by Atari, but was eventually released by Antic. You can see right there it tried to boot the cartridge directly, was not successful, so it went back out through DOS and went to the command processor. At this point, we have the opportunity to load the RS-232 handler. We can then go back to the command processor and then run the cartridge again. And as we can see, running just fine. Oh gosh, okay, what about DOS XE? Well, let's see. Try everything. We're going to try all the DOSes. Okay. DOS XE. I'm not going to try 2.5 because 2.0 worked. Yeah. But if you want to try 2.5, 2.5 runs just fine as well. And there's DOS XE right here. As you can see, DOS XE is just hammering through just fine. Now, I don't think there's a handler loaded by default. Actually, it looks like there is. And yes, there it is, DOS XE running just fine. If we take an exit out, we go directly to the DOS-exe operating system command processor. Exit the cartridge again, everything works out as expected. So, okay. What about some more finicky DOSes? What about DOS-XL? DOS-XL has a notoriously high memlow. Let's find out. We go ahead and boot DOS-XL. Let's see. OSS DOS-XL 2.3. And we can see right here, it goes into the menu, just fine. Okay, fine. If we go to cartridge, you'll see that it bounces right back out again. And that gives us the opportunity to load the RS-232 handler. Now if we load again, we can see it's loading just fine. And it's absolutely working great. So as you can see, I mean, this is extremely compatible and works across a huge number of DOSes. There's still a lot of work to do, but hopefully, we'll be able to take and work through the remaining issues with the flow control and speed to try and get the speed up for everyone to get a version of PLATOTERM that everybody can enjoy using, both in cartridge and in disk form. And in fact, I'm still deliberating on whether or not to keep the separate disk format or to completely go to the cartridge single file format altogether. Let me know in the comments what you think. Until next time, guys, have fun. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you find this program useful and enjoyable. Thank you.